okay, you have no idea how many Israeli Khara dog came to this hospital and I sent him to Jahannam. I
For
literally
real?
sent him to Jahannam.
This guy has checked himself into a mental health facility citing panic attacks.
Get the fuck off I'm on public property. Do you have what do you have to say about...
Wow,
Yeah.
like mother, like daughter, huh? What we heard from that Australian hospital, leaving them soiled for longer in their beds and, you know, things like that. That's horrific.
No one should ever be denied medical care based on their race, religion, or nationality. There is never an excuse for that.
Is there a butt coming? I think there's a big butt coming.
I feel like there is, yeah.
So
a massive butt coming.
All right, folks, this is Harris Sultan. And there's been some major developments vis-a-vis the two Muslim nurses who expressed their desire to kill more Jews. Now, the Muslim community of Australia, instead of condemning the action, they actually condemned the condemnation. They said that the Israeli Jew actually baited them and provoked them into saying those atrocious things because otherwise Muslims never say stuff like that. So the Israeli Jew actually released the unedited video and has been in touch with the Australian police. So let's have a look at the unedited video.
You know what? Oh, shit.
How are you, man?
Good, how are you, my man?
And you can tell that this is a random connection. Neither of the two parties knew who they're going to get in touch with.
Pretty good. Are you a nurse, a doctor?
I'm a doctor, my man.
A doctor
He's a liar. He's not a doctor.
for what?
In hospital. What about you? Where you from?
I'm from Israel, from the Holy Land.
Right. You know what? I'm gonna be really honest.
Straight
with
away.
you.
All right.
I'm gonna be really honest with you. You actually got a really, really beautiful eyes.
Thank you,
But
man.
I'm so upset that you're Israeli. Like, eventually you're gonna get killed and you're gonna go to Jahannam, inshallah.
See, straight away he went into it. Where was the provocation? Where was this baiting?
But like these pretty eyes, they should stay in this world for longer.
Why do you
Like,
think?
I
Why
swear-
do you think I'm gonna get killed?
Because inshallah one day, God will. and
Maybe because I
you're gonna-
served in the IDF. That's why.
That's definitely the answer. Correct.
That's the
Yes.
reason.
That might be a bit of a bait, though. Hey, I served in the IDF.
Because I served in the IDF. What's the problem with that? What's the issue with that?
Because you killed innocent people. That's why.
Killed? I
you
was
guys are-
protecting my country.
So you kill innocent people to protect your country. What kind of soul do you have? You have no soul.
In a war, people die, as you know.
No.
They started
No,
the
that's
war.
Not 1200.
Who
against
started?
57.
It's okay. Your time will come.
Who started?
and I
Who
hope to
started
God-
this war?
I hope you guys.
Who
didn't
elected
do the
Hamas?
shit.
Who elected
This
Hamas?
it's Palestine's country.
Oh, I didn't even see that. He was actually proud of saying that we elected Hamas. So they're proud of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pure pride at that.
Not your
Hello,
country, you piece
how
of
are you?
shit.
What's your name?
Oh.
No, none of you.
We're
business with my
talking
name.
politely
Listen to me.
here. We're
One
talking politely
day,
here.
One day,
One day.
your time will come and you will die the most horrible
You
death.
sprayed
You
hate.
remember
We
me,
sprayed
and I
positivity.
prayed,
We spread
and I
protection.
want
We
you-
spread
Listen to me.
peace.
Listen to me.
And
when
you
your-
spread
when your
death.
time comes.
How
when
are
your
you
time
doctors?
comes,
Wait.
I want you to remember my
I have-
face
How are you doctors?
Okay,
so you
okay.
can understand
Gotcha.
that you will
I have
die
a
the most
question though.
disgusting death.
All right, for sure. I have a question though.
Yeah, what's your,
I have a question. Let's say an Israeli.
I
God
won't treat
forbid.
them. I won't treat them. I'll kill them.
You'll kill them? So if an Israeli is in
Wow.
Australia and God forbid something happened to him and he comes
Not
to your
God forbid.
hospital,
I hope to God.
would
Oh my gosh.
Look at
Oh my gosh.
you kill him?
Okay, you have no idea how many Israeli Khara dog came to this hospital and I sent him to Jahannam. I
For
literally
real?
sent him to Jahannam.
For real? So if just Jewish people comes there,
And he left. So I don't think there was any baiting involved. He said straight away that you're going to get killed because you are an Israeli Jew. That's it. So Australia's been blowing up, and a lot of Australians who have been oblivious to this kind of mindset, which people in Britain are all too familiar with, made me wonder why are Australians responding to it differently to how the British people responded to it when these kind of incidents started happening nearly a decade ago. So as it turns out, this guy has checked himself into a mental health facility citing panic attacks, and so has the woman in the video. And this is how the woman's family reacted immediately after this video went viral.
Hey, I'm on public property. What?
This is a woman's mother.
Get the fuck off
I'm
my
on public property. Do you have what do you have to say about the allegations that Sarah? Excuse me, Sarah. What are the what do you guys have to say about? Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. I'm on public land. Mate, what do you have to say about what Sarah said? Why not?
Because no one is welcome to my house.
Why is she threatening to kill Israeli people? She's admitted to killing Israeli people, man.
Was I on the phone?
Mate, don't stop walking towards me. Mate, listen to me, brother. All right, okay. I need my phone back. Hey,
listen to me, brother. What's your reaction to it so far, Nuria?
Did he take his phone in that?
Yeah, he did. I don't know whether he returned it later or not, but that was the initial reaction. What is your gut reaction when you see something like that?
And that was that doctor lady's mother. Wow,
Yeah.
like mother, like daughter, huh? I don't know. It's pretty shocking, to be honest. It leaves a very, very bad taste in your mouth to know that they're actually doctors. I was with the IDF fellow when he was like, "Are you guys doctors for real?" Because I'm pretty sure when you're a doctor, when you're trying to be a doctor and you qualify, you have to swear an oath where you treat all patients regardless of where they're from. But you see this kind of sheer hatred come to life, like pure evil animosity just manifest when it comes to the Israel-Palestine conflict, and especially when it comes to anti-Semitism and the rise of it. I didn't realize things were so bad in Australia, but no, if that's the kind of rhetoric that doctors in your hospitals are going around and saying, and I'm not even sure if that guy was just speaking in an exaggerated, hyperbolic sense to kind of, thump his chest a bit and be like, I have like sent them, to God already. That's just, he needs to be investigated for sure, regardless of mental health. I feel like there needs to be some investigations there, how they get away with saying things like that. And to be honest, I mentioned this like a while ago when we had rising anti-Semitism in the UK, that, there would be Jewish patients who I would feel severely uncomfortable if I was Jewish. And I went to a Muslim GP who had strongly, let's say, even attended one of the protests in favor of Palestine every weekend in London, or had kind of expressed strong views and condemnation towards Jewish people. It would make somebody very, very uncomfortable, and that shouldn't be the state of affairs in any country. But that is wild, and I'm not sure if he's hiding behind mental health now, because he seemed pretty lucid with what he was saying in that clip. But yeah, it's a bit of a madness, if you ask me.
Yeah, and I want to give a qualifier that obviously I don't think that every Muslim doctor is like that or would behave like that. But the reason why it's making a lot of people uneasy is the lack of condemnation from the wider Muslim community. That's the reason that makes people uneasy. And this is the reason why Australia is blowing up. However, just to give you a bit of context, this nurse was in Bankstown Hospital. And that region is heavily inhabited by Muslims. So you have a lot of Muslim nurses, Muslim doctors. But this is not where the story ends. It's been reported that anti-Semitism is all too common in that hospital. Have a listen to this.
I just saw an email from someone who was going to have an operation there, a Jewish man, have an operation there a few years ago, under the Liberal government, by the way, not under Minns. He cancelled his operation at Bankstown Hospital because a friend of his who worked at the hospital said, if you Jewish don't come here, they spit on the food of the Jews before it's delivered. They don't do mandatory post-ops. They leave their beds soiled for as long as they possibly can. They make life as difficult as possible for Jewish patients. So he said, I cancelled my operation at the hospital because of that. That now, as I said, that's before Minns. This has been going on at this hospital, this Jewish hatred, for years.
So again, that doesn't surprise me. Killing is not the only form of discrimination. There are all kinds of other acts that you can do. And this is actually more in line with what a lot of people of Muslim faith would be doing to Jews. that makes sense. But I think that language that he has killed many Jews, that might be hyperbolic. But this is not where the story ends with that guy either. So obviously, because of the uproar and public pressure, Australian police is investigating, and this is what we found.
We have exclusive breaking news now. Police have found damning evidence against the Bankstown nurse filmed bragging about killing Israeli patients. Joining me on the desk now is Natasha Squarey with this story. Natasha, what are these new allegations?
Well, Angie, not long after the nurses were sacked, detectives allegedly found drugs in Ahmad Nadir's personal locker at Bankstown Hospital. Nadir allegedly asked a former colleague to empty his locker, but that staff member felt uncomfortable and called police. Officers seized 1 vial of morphine, and it will now be part of the investigation into this shocking hate video in which Nadir allegedly admits to killing Israeli patients. Now, following this drug discovery, detectives raided Nadir's Bankstown home last night and took away several bags of potential evidence. Police have confirmed they've received a file from the Israeli influencer who was talking to the nurses in this random online chat room. That full video is critical for detectives to move forward with their investigation and to lay charges.
Natasha Squarey with those developing details. Thank you.
So, again, I don't know how much benefit of the doubt you want to give to this guy. Maybe he was just stealing morphine for non-nefarious purposes. Maybe he's a drug addict, or maybe he was just selling it to other people. Or maybe he was using it to, to somehow harm his Jewish patients. I don't know. I think that's for the police to work out. Your reaction so far? Does that surprise you?
Honestly, yes, it's surprising that it's gone to those extents, and you guys have hospitals that are operating with doctors who think like this and have access to potentially lethal, life-ending drugs. Yeah, exactly. And that they've kind of got them in their own personal capacity for whatever reason. I definitely think he needs to be investigated along with his sister and the whole barrage, if there is.
No, she wasn't his sister, though.
Might think like them. Oh, okay. Sorry, however she's related.
She was a fellow Muslim. She was his fellow Muslim who hated Jews.
Okay, but either way, this is genuinely, I'm sure, I don't know how Australia works, but this meets the threshold, surely, of being struck off as a doctor. So I would really, really like to see Australia send a very strong message and basically, take away their privilege of being a doctor. And let's hope that the police get to the bottom of the investigations. And let's sincerely hope that the morphine was for his own personal use of some kind. Because, this is when it gets very, very scary, when kind of these tensions or like this genuine hatred for Jews, which obviously you and I know comes from, it's deep seated within the religion itself of Islam, and it's things that we had to learn and then learn the actual veracity of it and the scale of it in the practical sense. There's one thing reading about Jew hate in the Quran, but there's a different thing altogether of seeing it manifest in the real world and see how that plays out. But this is when it gets extremely dangerous and extremely nefarious, as you said, because as a doctor, you've got people's lives in your hand. Life and death is literally in your hands. And if your ideology is the thing guiding that, then essentially your patients are screwed. And again, I think like being a solicitor, a barrister, a doctor, these are privileged positions to hold in society. And I don't think that Tom, Dick, or Harry should hold these positions without being thoroughly vetted, whether that is certain views that you hold because of your religious identity, which for example, we see play out in this case. Just a quick question I had though, are they even Palestinian?
No, the guy is an Afghan and the woman is a Lebanese Muslim, but woman is probably born and raised in Australia.
Okay, yeah, so again, that hones my point and even more, which it's scary because this conflict has brought out the inner anti-Semites in Muslims by and large from various backgrounds. This is actually something that binds them because it's something crucial, again, to Islam. And so this is a kind of collective fight that they all take up. And whatever way that they can kind of do their bit, if you will, I'm sorry to even use that word, but in, let's say, standing up for Palestine or using their voice or advocating it, whether it's being a doctor and refusing to treat Jewish patients or going as far as to mistreat them, like what we heard from that Australian hospital, leaving them soiled for longer in their beds and, things like that. That's horrific. Like, I can't believe that's been allowed to go on for so long. That is genuinely, like, it blows my mind that is happening in a place like Australia. I'm sorry, I never even imagined that would be. Again, you put it in, you contextualized it and said that's in a very kind of Muslim neighborhood, but still, regardless, that should not be happening. I can give you some of our most kind of, largest proportion of Muslims in different boroughs in London or other parts of the country, and if that was found to be happening on a grand scale,
nothing would have happened.
Like continuous amount of years, I'd like to think that would
I'd like to think
be allowed to go on, Harris. I really do.
I'd like to think that too, but I think the situation in London hospitals would be a lot worse. Well, at least that's my opinion, because I think British public does not react to news like this. I mean, it's been nearly 2 weeks and it's still blowing up in Australian media. So it's not going away. I just wanted to qualify your statement about this hatred for Jews is central to Islamic doctrine. It's not just because of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, despite the fact that these people might claim that this is why we hate them because they're committing a genocide in Gaza. No, have a listen to Muslims themselves.
Reason why you have to fight them is because they are Jews and Christians. You should fight those empires around you, or those hukumat around you, which are Jew or Christian, until they give the jizya. And then the howness of that is in the hadith. 3 options that they're given: either you give the jizya, or you do this, or you do that.
You do this or that. By do this, he means either you convert, or then you die, or you pay jizya. That's it. That's the 3 options. And that's what he's saying. And it's not just him.
Also, just on that point, obviously, anti-Semitism is not like a recent phenomenon that we're seeing. It's just the fact that this conflict has exacerbated the way we're seeing it manifest around the world at the minute. But it's, as you were saying, it's entrenched in the religious ideology itself. It's been going on for years. And the general mentality that many believing Muslims, not all, many believing Muslims have towards Jews very much is what Muhammad Hijab kind of just relayed.
Yeah, it's doctrinal. There's no excuse. Have a listen to these wonderful Islamic scholars.
أو كرهنا لليهود من منطلق عقيدة. القرآن هو اللي بيدعونا نحن نكرههم وما نحبهمش. لو أن اليهود تركوا لنا فلسطين خلاص يبقوا حبايبنا.
If the Jews left Palestine to us, would we start loving them?
لا طبعا.
Of course not.
عمرهم ما هيبقوا حبايبنا. إطلاقا. عقيدتك في اليهود واحد إنهم كفار. 2.
So he's basically saying that we hate them because they're infidels. That's the reason why we hate them, and it won't go away.
And that's why the 2-state solution will never work, just saying.
Yeah, even if you gave them everything that they want, this hatred that they have, it's not good enough. They have to go away. That's why even the slogan says, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That's it. No Jews. Yeah. If they want to live in that region, they have to live under the Muslim rule, and they have to pay jizya as 2nd or 3rd class.
They have to be under dhimmitude. They have to be dhimmis of Islam, essentially, for the Muslims to be all right with that. Which again is doctrinal. It's not anything to do with just kind of any conflict. That it is long-standing hatred from the time of the Prophet.
Yeah. So how are Australian Muslims responding to this? This woman, she started a new political party, and she calls it Australia's Voice. So how is Australia responding to this? Have a listen.
Let me be crystal clear. What these 2 nurses said was wrong. No one should ever be denied medical care based on their race, religion, or nationality. There is never an excuse for that.
Is there a but coming? I think there's a big but coming.
I feel like there is, yeah. Massive but coming. Oh, gosh.
So she gets the obvious out of the way in the first 10 seconds or something, and then it's all downhill from here.
That being said, we need to address the elephant in the room. The Prime Minister has commented. Premiers and ministers have weighed in. The entire media landscape has been consumed by this story, front-page news around the country for days on end.
So we shouldn't have basically talked about it.
As it should be.
Yeah, so she's basically condemning the condemnation of those two people. That's what she's doing.
She's annoyed at the widespread coverage as well. Yeah, exactly.
Why? And look at the reasoning and listen to her reasoning.
Thankfully, the police have confirmed that there's no proof the nurses have killed any Israeli patients. They made a terrible comment, yet are being treated as if they have committed the absolute worst crime imaginable. These individuals have been fired, banned from ever working as nurses again, raided by police, placed under the most intense public scrutiny, and
they should have been rewarded.
Now, the ones being hospitalized. They've apologized. They have been punished. What is the end goal here?
The end goal here is to create a deterrence and to let people know that this kind of hatred or these kind of beliefs are not welcome in Australia, much less in critical services. So that was Australia's voice. Now, let me give you the voice of...
I'm guessing she doesn't represent the majority of Australia's voice, does she?
She does represent all Australians. Have a listen to all the Australians that she has in a party. This guy, he's Australia's voice. They're all Australia's voice. These guys represent Australia. Again, nothing wrong
Australia's
with...
voice for the Islamic party. This is kind of like the pictures we've got coming out of Birmingham and Bradford.
Exactly.
They're definitely not Britain's voice, let me tell you that.
Yeah, but at least they don't even claim that. I can appreciate those people who call it
I know.
the Muslim vote.
At least they haven't used that name.
The next video that I'm going to
really
play...
taking them.
Yeah, the next video that I'm going to play to you, they're called the Muslim vote. So have a listen to what he's saying.
Two nurses making comments about Israeli patients was never meant to be literal or intended to be a threat to patient care.
He knows it. He's spoken to them. How does he know? He's just saying it because he has to defend his brothers. That's it.
In current times, in these times in which a genocide is unfolding live on our screens, emotions can sometimes get the better of anybody. Though the most revealing aspect of the political outrage is the speed, intensity, and coordination of the response from figures who have been otherwise largely indifferent, weak, or outright complicit and enabling in the face of mass atrocities. The Prime Minister weighed in. The New South Wales Health Minister, Ryan Park, declared it was the most vile thing he'd ever seen.
Yeah.
Really? Yet these same voices who claim to be the arbiters of moral decency have remained silent, hesitant, when confronted with the most egregious acts of violence committed by Israel.
Indulging in whataboutery. How would you respond to that? I mean, Australian politicians are not responsible for what's happening in Gaza just because there is a war taking place. And let's even steelman their position and say there is an actual genocide taking place in Gaza. How does that warrant Muslims in Australia to behave the way that these two behaved? How does that warrant that? If there is a war going on in Ukraine and Russia, would we allow Ukrainians to start attacking Russian citizens here in Australia? Would we allow that? What kind of logic is that? So again, whataboutery, and they're not condemning the two nurses. They're showing empathy and sympathy for the two nurses. And instead of condemning them, they're actually condemning the condemnation. And they're saying, you should just shut up. You should not say anything. Let me give you a bit of perspective. So just yesterday or a couple of days ago, two hijabi women in a shopping center were attacked by some person. And it is believed that it was because they were Muslims. So two Muslim women attacked a Melbourne shopping center amid a rise in Islamophobia. They were pushed to the ground and they were punched in the face by another woman. So that happened. And obviously, any decent Australian, any decent person would condemn this without making any excuses. Imagine if we qualified this attack by saying that, well, Muslims have been behaving really badly. So that's why, you should expect these kind of reactions from the public. How would you feel if we did that? Or if we indulged in whataboutery? That is an atrocious behavior. And that's what angering the wider Australian community.
Yeah, damn straight it should be, right? I mean, it's basic whataboutery that they're engaging in, as you said, whether you agree with the term genocide or not being applied to what's happening or happened in Gaza. this is a conflict that's happening hundreds of miles away, and the Australian government, to be honest, have absolutely no hand in that. But to use that, or their perceived silence of that, as a justification for what was said in this case by actual doctors who are qualified under Australian jurisdiction, it's a very, very sad and poor excuse of deflecting. I just think it's extremely distasteful for Muslims to try and cover up extremely bad behavior and extreme forms of anti-Semitism for the sake of what's a war or conflict that's happening hundreds of miles away. So I don't know about you, but if I was a Jewish person living in Australia right now and I had to go anywhere near that neighborhood, first of all, I would not trust any doctor there as far as I could throw them, to be honest, and for very good reason. And to be honest, I have a lot of respect for the Australian media not shutting up about this, as well as your politicians and your health ministers and whoever else have commented. I love the fact that you have irked these activist or influencer Muslims, like the one you showed me, who, when he was speaking, I just wanted to get a pair of scissors and chop the scraggly bits of his beard off so badly. It was hard to focus on what he was saying, but
what about my beard?
Yours is all right. It's not at the point where I need to snip. But yeah, I'm glad, and you need to keep it in the news cycle, because things like this, obviously, they would foster such civil unrest, and it can lead to that on a larger scale, as it probably has with this incident of the hijabi women being attacked. So if you don't kind of put out these fires as and when they take place and send a strong message to the general public, then it can get out of hand, and you'll just see a lot more anti-Semitism and a lot more anti-Muslim bigotry. I will never call it Islamophobia, because it's not, but anti-Muslim bigotry as a reaction to that, and that's never good for societal communal relations.
As I was saying earlier, that this behavior is not just unique to Muslims of a specific country. It's almost a universal behavior. Remember, this guy, it's actually your tweet. He was an NHS doctor, and he could not condemn Hamas, and he was actually justifying their actions in the October 7 terrorist attacks. And there was a massive pushback, and I think he was eventually sacked. And also remember this guy, Saeed Masih Nouri. He's a doctor, and he says, I'm a Muslim. Daily I treat Jews, and I've taken a Hippocratic oath, I think he meant, but he said, I've taken a hypocritical oath.
Oh my God. Oh, yeah, hypocritical for him, because it is. Do you get it?
Oh, no, I don't think he intended that.
I know, but I mean, it works, because in the context of Islam, as a believing, practicing Muslim, to be a doctor and take that oath, you are being hypocritical, because you can't treat Jews the same way according to your God anyway, and your religious duties. So in a way, you're being hypocritical if you do.
Oh, by the way, he was an NHS doctor as well. I didn't know that. So anyways, I've taken a Hippocratic oath that outlines my responsibilities in the Buckingham crew. However, I must admit that if I had the power, I would vanish every Jew. And then these people have the goal to ask why the public is panicking, or why there is such a strong pushback. So I just want to read this particular tweet, which did pretty well. I think it's got 1.5 million views. And this guy says, this may cost me followers, but this question desperately needs to be asked. And I speak as someone with multiple Muslim friends whom I deeply respect. Has the rise of Islamism in the West reached a point where we can no longer trust Muslims in any professional role unless we know them personally? I know a lot of people would feel uneasy because, we shouldn't paint everyone with the same brush. But again, when you see that many examples of doctors and nurses who are saying the same thing over and over again, and they are targeting a particular community, then of course people are going to ask these questions. Yeah, you can silence them, you can shut them down, call them Islamophobes or bigots or whatever, but you can't really stop people from thinking. Imagine needing critical care at Bankstown Hospital in Sydney, with your life potentially in the hands of radical Islamists, entrusting your health to individuals filled with jihadi hate. It could happen to any of us. I'm being honest when I say I would never have known these nurses were vile jihadists unless warned in advance. Of all the daily Islamist hate and terror we're seeing, this one is so profoundly unsettling. I feel sick thinking about it. But tragically, along with countless other incidents over the last 16 months, and probably more, it begs the most difficult of questions that all of humanity has to be asking. Stereotyping or judging people is deeply entrenched in our evolution. When we see certain behaviors from certain looking people that our brains subconsciously make a mental note of that. Now, you can argue that that's not how it should be, but that's how human biology works. Let me say that again. Any person who thinks that it's okay to attack a hijabi woman because of this hijabi woman, or because that's the mental note that your brain has created, then you're an idiot. And that's not how anyone should behave. No one should behave like that. But it's an impossible task to expect people not to create mental notes of people. The only way to stop that from happening is that people in power and the community members of the community in question should do everything in their power to stop events like these from happening.
Absolutely, I agree with you. What really kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth is the fact that normally we just assume very civil, professional people, but the sheer kind of like hatred for them, like, we wish death upon you, and like, not just death, but you're going to die the death of a dog, and really, really things that, it takes effort to come out with so much hatred. And it's like, as I was saying, it's a very deeply entrenched hatred that kind of just seeps to the surface regardless of knowing anything about that person. So again, it just makes me constantly learn about to what extent we deal with anti-Semitism. Coming from an ex-Islamic background myself, it never ceases to amaze me how anti-Semitic Muslims or the ideology of Islam can push people to be. So I'll always bear that in mind. And I mean, this was a prime example of where and how that can manifest even somewhere as far as Australia. But I completely agree with you. We would be just as bad as those Muslims condemning the condemnation if we were to say this justifies going out and, attacking Muslims or whatever. I mean, there is absolutely zero excuse for anti-Muslim bigotry on the one end and vis-a-vis anti-Semitism on the other end. They're both two sides of the same coin. And again, that's why I'm really, really grateful that the Australian authorities and the public and the mainstream media, you have been keeping this in the news cycle, because it won't be tolerated. And I hope that they give attacks on hijabis or any potential attacks on Muslims the same level of coverage, just to kind of send out a strong message that violence of any kind is absolutely just there's no place for it in modern peaceful societies like the one Australia should aim and kind of intend to be.
Let's discuss it from our own personal experiences point of view. When we were Muslims, I thought that I hated Israel, and I thought I hated the Jews because they have enslaved our Muslim brothers of Palestine. But with deeper understanding of Islam, I realized that if the Israeli-Palestinian issue disappeared tomorrow, that hatred isn't going anywhere. But I don't think even Muslims realize that their hatred for Jewish people is deeper than the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. When you were growing up, how did you see the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? And did you marry the two things together? That it's not just the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. They are, as the guy said, that the Quran tells us to hate them. Jews were turned into apes and pigs because they broke the Sabbath. I think Muslims don't, but again, they're probably not that deep, and most Muslims don't really know what's written in the Quran. And they might think that they hate the Jews because of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but it's definitely much deeper than that.
Yeah, when I was growing up in Saudi, even though we were in an international school, a lot of the Muslims there were obviously Arab Muslims, and many of them were Palestinian as well. So just because a part and parcel of being the Muslim Ummah, I guess we'd have separate classes to study Islam and things like that. There was no second thought given. I never once considered what is Israel's position in any of this. In fact, I thought, what is Israel doing in the Middle East, to be honest? Like, why are they even there? Later on, obviously, it kind of made sense to me that there is a long-standing hatred for the Jews, and that had also been ingrained in me without me knowing it since I was a child, because I had always been told there was a difference between us as Muslims and Christians and Jews. And it wasn't verbatim like said to me every single day that they're, sorry to say, and I feel really, really bad for even repeating these words, but that they're different. But it was told to me that the way they worship is wrong. They might be similar to us in the sense that they're monotheistic, but they were turned into pigs, and they are the worst of creatures. which comes directly from the Quran. Obviously, this was taught to me in Quran classes and things like that. But as a child, you don't really go around, isolating Jews and Christians, especially growing up in a Christian country before that when I was living in London. So you kind of just assume that you're living in the world of the infidel, which sounds wild to me now, but all of these views were internalized. So there's me, 9 years old, wearing my hijab, thinking, this is my rebellion in the world of the infidel. Here's my marker to delineate that I'm Muslim and I'm not like them. And oh my God, like their ways of they're so wrong. The Christians eat pork and they drink alcohol, and the Jews go to their synagogues and they got the curly sideburns. Sorry, I know that's only Orthodox Jews, but I would think that these are the manifestations of Satan misguiding them in a sense.
All the while when we had the clowns that I showed you earlier with those weird beards. Who are you to
I know.
Make fun of anyone. So anyway, that's where we are at the moment. I don't think this is going to die out anytime soon. He might have gotten away with his vile comments, but he won't get away with the vial of morphine that he had in his locker room. And as he asked his friend to get rid of the evidence, and luckily enough, the friend said no, and he notified the police. So I'll keep you posted with what's happening with that. And don't forget to subscribe to Nuria Khan's YouTube channel, Holy Humanist, where she posts amazing content. And she's an ex-Muslim, atheist, and a women's rights activist. She feels very strongly about these topics, so do check it out.
And to be honest, if I was a Jewish person living in what should be a high-trust society like Australia, do not go anywhere near that hospital is kind of my advice, to be honest. Whether that doctor had morphine in his locker for his own personal use or not.
He's not a doctor. He's a nurse. He lied.
Oh my God, that's even worse.
You didn't know that?
He said, yeah, I'm a doctor right beginning of the video, like all smug.
I told you, no, he lied. He wasn't a doctor.
Okay, well then, as you can tell, absolutely zero moral compass. Not that we were in, his morality was kind of up there to begin with, because look at the kind of things he said. But yeah, to be honest, that's why I tweeted about that GP. If you have an inkling as a Jewish person that somebody is kind of not going to treat you fairly, whatever, do not, under any circumstances, put your life in their hands. So if that happens to be the closest suburb to you, drive to the next one, honestly.
As the guy from the Muslim Vote said, that emotions are running high, so anything can happen. So he actually gave us a warning. So you're only born once, so value your life. Why risk it? Anyway, that's it from us. Until next time, ta-da.